Emily ran through the shadowed corridor, heart hammering as the figure behind her moved with a chilling rhythm, each step like a countdown. Its whisper echoed coldly, every word a promise that her escape was over, the gleaming scythe poised to strike. Panic made her legs tremble, every instinct screaming to flee, yet the dark presence followed unyielding, enjoying the hunt. Suddenly, a flash of light cut through the fog. The scythe halted midair. A tall, muscular man appeared, eyes glowing, coat fluttering in the cold mist. He blocked the deadly strike, shielding Emily, and the masked figure froze, realizing this opponent would not yield easily. The night was unusually still when Emily stepped off the late bus outside a forgotten Pennsylvania town. Her backpack sagged, glasses sliding down her nose as she scanned the cracked pavement. The street lamps flickered weakly, throwing long shadows across the deserted parking lot. She glanced at the old roadside shrine, half hidden by weeds, and felt a shiver crawl up her spine. A distant hum rose from somewhere deep within the dark field beside the shrine. Emily pulled her jacket tighter and took a hesitant step forward, unaware that a shadowed figure watched silently from the ruins of a nearby building. A cold breeze swept through the empty street, carrying whispers Emily could not understand. She froze as a low, hollow laugh echoed from the shrine, making her heart race. The figure moved closer, body flickering between solidity and mist. Its face was pale, eyes black and hollow, tears dark as ash streaking its cheeks. Every breath it exhaled seemed to steal the warmth from the air. Emily stumbled backward, tripping over broken bricks and twisting her ankle. Panic gripped her chest as she tried to stand, but the figure glided forward effortlessly. She realized with growing dread that this was no ordinary ghost. It wanted her, drawn to her presence like a predator to prey. Out of nowhere, a tall man stepped from the mist at the edge of the shrine. His coat fluttered like dark wings, and his eyes glowed faintly white. He raised a silver-hilted sword, positioning himself between Emily and the advancing apparition. His face was stern, yet carried a sadness that made Emily pause for a fraction of a second. The spirit lunged with unnatural speed, its body twisting and warping as if caught between worlds. Emily stumbled backward, scrambling over debris, heart hammering in her chest. The man blocked the ghost's strikes with an effortless precision, sparks of strange light flashing as steel met shadow. Emily's mind raced as she tried to comprehend what was happening. Her eyes darted to the dilapidated building where the ghost had emerged. There she saw another figure, a young man with short dark hair and an anxious gaze, trapped behind a crumbling wall. His lips moved silently, pointing frantically toward an opening in the shrine. Emily felt a strange pull, almost as if time itself was bending. A sudden gust flung her backward, sending her tumbling through the shrine's overgrown path. The malevolent figure reached for her, its black tears dripping, tendrils of cold smoke curling around her fingers. The heroic man's sword cut through the fog, deflecting the ghost's grasp and sending a ripple of light across the mist. Emily crawled to safety behind a toppled statue, trying to steady her breathing. The young man from the building emerged cautiously, holding a small lantern that glowed faint yellow, illuminating the path ahead. He beckoned Emily toward the shrine's archway, signaling her to follow. The ghost hissed, recoiling from the combined presence of both protectors. Emily felt a surge of hope as she ran, limbs trembling but determined. She glanced back, seeing the shadowy figure twist and waver, its anger palpable, but the two men shielded her with unwavering resolve. I barely caught my breath as the mist parted, revealing the narrow path through the abandoned cemetery. The ground was uneven, littered with toppled stones and tangled roots. Behind me, the shadow moved with a slow, deliberate patience, each step echoing like a heartbeat I could not outrun. Its gaze pressed down, black and hollow, filled with an impossible hunger. My hands trembled as I clutched my bag strap, scanning the area for anything familiar, anything safe, but everything looked the same under the pale moonlight. Suddenly, the man who had blocked the scythe stayed close, his presence a barrier I could almost lean on. His coat flared as he moved, muscles tense and alert, eyes glowing softly through the fog. He did not speak, but every movement said he would not falter. Ahead, a young woman crouched beside a broken mausoleum, gripping a lantern with trembling fingers. She whispered something I could not catch, yet the urgency in her posture made me push forward. The shadow shifted, cold tendrils brushing against my neck. I ran, stumbling over roots and cracked stones, the echo of my own footsteps mingling with the hollow laughter of the spirit. My chest ached as I tried to control my panic, focusing on the rhythm of the man beside me. He raised his sword in silent warning whenever the ghost darted too close, sparks of pale light flaring where blade met mist. I felt my heart in my throat, the mixture of fear and adrenaline leaving me dizzy. In a flash, the young woman beside the mausoleum ran toward us, tripping once but recovering, her lantern casting long, shaky shadows across the tombstones. The shadow lunged with a twisting, impossible motion, brushing against my shoulder, and the man intercepted it effortlessly, striking with precision that left me in awe. He moved like he belonged to a different world, untouchable yet entirely present. The masked figure hissed, recoiling but not retreating. This chase was more than a pursuit. It was a game of endurance, patience, and unseen rules I did not understand. We moved deeper into the cemetery, lanterns flickering in the hands of the young woman who introduced herself as Claire, whispering urgently about a hidden path. Behind us, the shadow contorted, twisting through gravestones as if obeying a rhythm only it could sense. The man beside me, silent and unwavering, blocked every advance, forcing the dark figure back each time it threatened to reach me. My mind spun with the absurdity of it all. A normal night turned into a surreal fight for survival. The cold mist clung to my skin, making every step heavier and every breath more urgent. Through narrow corridors and forgotten tombs we pressed on, the light from Claire's lantern flickering across the cracked stone walls. I could see traces of old carvings, inscriptions faded by time, and a sense of history pressing down like a silent witness to everything that had happened here. The ghost prowled above us, its presence curling around the shadows, every movement a reminder of how close it was to reaching me. I stayed close to the man, feeling the quiet strength radiating from him, and trusting him with a faith I could not explain. Finally, a narrow doorway led into a small chapel, crumbling but intact enough to provide temporary cover. I ducked inside with the others, legs shaking, lungs burning. The man leaned against the doorway, sword ready, eyes scanning, muscles taut like coiled steel, guarding us with unwavering vigilance. Claire pointed toward a hidden stairwell beneath the altar, whispering that it might lead to safety. I hesitated, but instinct pushed me forward. As I descended, the cold presence of the ghost followed, curling around the entrance like smoke, yet unwilling to enter fully, held back by the man's silent guard. The stairs led to a lower chamber, dusty and silent, except for the echo of our steps. Every sound magnified, every shadow threatening. The man's sword, I barely caught my breath as the mist parted, revealing the narrow path through the abandoned cemetery. The ground was uneven, littered with toppled stones and tangled roots. Behind me, the shadow moved with a slow, deliberate patience, each step echoing like a heartbeat I could not outrun. Its gaze pressed down, black and hollow, filled with an impossible hunger. My hands trembled as I clutched my bag strap, scanning the area for anything familiar, anything safe, but everything looked the same under the pale moonlight. Suddenly, the man who had blocked the scythe stayed close, his presence a barrier I could almost lean on. His coat flared as he moved, muscles tense and alert, eyes glowing softly through the fog. He did not speak, but every movement said he would not falter. Ahead, a young woman crouched beside a broken mausoleum, gripping a lantern with trembling fingers. She whispered something I could not catch, yet the urgency in her posture made me push forward. The shadow shifted, cold tendrils brushing against my neck. I ran, stumbling over roots and cracked stones, the echo of my own footsteps mingling with the hollow laughter of the spirit. My chest ached as I tried to control my panic, focusing on the rhythm of the man beside me. He raised his sword in silent warning whenever the ghost darted too close, sparks of pale light flaring where blade met mist. I felt my heart in my throat, the mixture of fear and adrenaline leaving me dizzy. In a flash, the young woman beside the mausoleum ran toward us, tripping once but recovering, her lantern casting long, shaky shadows across the tombstones. The shadow lunged with a twisting, impossible motion, brushing against my shoulder, and the man intercepted it effortlessly, striking with precision that left me in awe. He moved like he belonged to a different world, untouchable yet entirely present. The masked figure hissed, recoiling but not retreating. This chase was more than a pursuit. It was a game of endurance, patience, and unseen rules I did not understand. We moved deeper into the cemetery, lanterns flickering in the hands of the young woman who introduced herself as Claire, whispering urgently about a hidden path. Behind us, the shadow contorted, twisting through gravestones as if obeying a rhythm only it could sense. The man beside me, silent and unwavering, blocked every advance, forcing the dark figure back each time it threatened to reach me. My mind spun with the absurdity of it all. A normal night turned into a surreal fight for survival. The cold mist clung to my skin, making every step heavier and every breath more urgent. Through narrow corridors and forgotten tombs, we pressed on, the light from Claire's lantern flickering across the cracked stone walls. I could see traces of old carvings, inscriptions faded by time, and a sense of history pressing down like a silent witness to everything that had happened here. The ghost prowled above us, its presence curling around the shadows, every movement a reminder of how close it was to reaching me. I stayed close to the man, feeling the quiet strength radiating from him, and trusting him with a faith I could not explain. Finally, a narrow doorway led into a small chapel, crumbling but intact enough to provide temporary cover. I ducked inside with the others, legs shaking, lungs burning. The man leaned against the doorway, sword ready, eyes scanning, muscles taut like coiled steel, guarding us with unwavering vigilance. Claire pointed toward a hidden stairwell beneath the altar, whispering that it might lead to safety. I hesitated, but instinct pushed me forward. As I descended, the cold presence of the ghost followed, curling around the entrance like smoke, yet unwilling to enter fully, held back by the man's silent guard. The stairs led to a lower chamber, dusty and silent except for the echo of our steps. Every sound magnified, every shadow threatening. The man's sword glimmered faintly in the lantern light, eyes never leaving the doorway. I could feel courage returning slightly, strengthened by his constant protection. Claire trailed behind, whispering about the path ahead. The ghost prowled above, each breath of cold air reminding me of its intent. It was patient, and I understood then that we were merely stalling for time. Through narrow corridors and forgotten rooms, we moved cautiously, each corner revealing fragments of history, echoes of lives long gone. Inscriptions on walls and broken furniture hinted at old tragedies, adding to the sense that the place remembered everything. My mind spun with questions about why we were here, how this spirit had found me, and who the man really was. His vigilance never wavered, every glance, every step, calculated to shield me from harm. Claire's lantern flickered across the walls, revealing glimpses of the shadow's relentless presence above us. Finally, a chamber led toward what seemed like daylight, or at least the illusion of it. The air grew warmer, and the oppressive mist began to fade. The man stood firm, forcing the shadow to hesitate, giving us a moment to gather strength. I realized then that survival was not only about speed or courage, but trust. Trust in those who would act when I could not, trust in the strange, inexplicable twists of fate that placed us together. The ghost lingered, watching, calculating, but its reach was curtailed, allowing us a reprieve. Emily paused at the exit, breathing deeply, sunlight washing over her for the first time in hours. Claire stayed close, lantern extinguished, eyes wide with relief. The man remained silent, sword lowered but alert, a guardian whose origin I could not fathom. The shadow had not vanished entirely, but we had breached its domain, if only for a moment. The encounter left a permanent mark on my memory, teaching me about vigilance, courage, and the thin line between life and the unseen, a lesson that would stay with me long after the mist cleared. The air outside the chapel felt warmer, though I knew it was only a fragile illusion. I pressed a hand against the stone wall, steadying myself, listening to the faint sound of birds somewhere above. For a moment it was easy to pretend that morning had come, and that all of this had been a bad dream. But dreams do not leave your skin cold, nor do they whisper along the edges of your mind. I caught my reflection in the cracked glass of an old lantern, and barely recognized the pale, wide-eyed figure staring back. Behind me, the tall man adjusted his coat, his gaze fixed on the tree line. We were not safe yet. Elena, The girl with the lantern walked ahead, guiding us with hesitant steps. I followed closely, torn between exhaustion and the need to keep moving. The man brought up the rear, a silent guardian whose very presence seemed to push the shadows back. I tried to speak, to ask where we were going, but the words caught in my throat. There was a strange pull in the air, as if each step drew us deeper into a story already written. Elena glanced at me over her shoulder, her eyes holding both fear and determination. The path led us to a clearing where broken statues lay scattered, moss climbing over weathered faces frozen in expressions of sorrow. It felt wrong to be there, as though we had stumbled into a place meant to remain hidden. My chest tightened, and I quickened my pace to stay close to Elena. A faint sound stirred the air, like wind through hollow pipes, though no wind blew. The tall man froze, his hand instinctively resting on the hilt of his blade, muscles sharp with alertness. I looked into the trees and saw nothing, only the lingering mist that refused to lift. Then the voice came, soft and steady, from nowhere and everywhere. It spoke a name I did not know, a name that made the hairs on my arms stand upright. Elena dropped her lantern, the glass shattering, and her lips moved as though she recognized the word. The man stepped forward, shielding us, his posture unflinching. The air shifted again, and the mist thickened until the statue seemed to vanish in its folds. I clutched at Elena's arm, and she pulled me toward a stone arch half hidden by ivy. The voice followed, lower now, coaxing, patient. I wanted to close my ears, to shut it out, but curiosity gnawed at me. My mind whispered that the voice knew something I had forgotten, something tied to why I was here at all. The man's sharp glance silenced me before I could respond, his eyes warning me to resist. We passed beneath the arch, and the ground dipped into an overgrown courtyard. Vines crawled across the stone floor, and faint markings glowed where moonlight touched. Elena knelt quickly, tracing them with her fingers, whispering fragments that sounded like prayer. The voice pressed harder, echoing in my skull, filling the air with its weight. My body shivered with both dread and longing. The man remained immovable, yet I could see his jaw tighten, as if even he felt the pull. His eyes burned with a quiet defiance. Then the mist parted, and the figure appeared again, taller now, features indistinct but aura unmistakable. It lingered at the edge of the courtyard, its presence making the glowing markings flicker like candles about to die. I felt myself take an involuntary step forward. Elena grabbed my hand, grounding me, her grip surprisingly strong. She shook her head, whispering that the figure fed on hesitation, on doubt, on the smallest crack in your resolve. Her fear was palpable, but her resolve even stronger. I clung to her hand like a lifeline. The man moved then, slow and deliberate, stepping between us and the figure. His blade gleamed faintly, a promise of resistance even when words failed. For the first time, he spoke, his voice deep and calm, telling us to keep moving, no matter what happened behind us. Reluctantly, Elena tugged me toward a narrow passage at the far end of the courtyard. My feet felt heavy, each step fighting against the weight of the voice that urged me to turn back. Still, her hand never let go of mine, and together we crossed the threshold. The tunnel beyond was low and damp, the air heavy with the scent of earth and age. Water dripped somewhere in the distance, each drop echoing like a clock counting down. I touched the walls, rough and cold, as if the stone itself disapproved of our passage. Behind us, the clash of sound erupted, steel against something less tangible but no less powerful. The man had stayed to fight, to hold the figure back. Elena urged me forward faster, her breath sharp, her lantern gone, but her determination burning brighter than before. I stumbled, my body aching with every motion, but fear pushed me onward. The tunnel stretched, winding like a serpent beneath the earth, until at last a faint glow appeared ahead. We emerged into a chamber where pale light poured through cracks in the ceiling. Elena collapsed onto the stone floor, catching her breath, eyes darting toward the tunnel we had left behind. I sank down beside her, heart racing, every muscle trembling with the memory of the voice still echoing faintly in my mind. We did not know if the man would return, or if he could truly defeat what had followed us. Yet in that moment of silence, I realized we had been given something precious: time, a fragile chance to understand where we were, why we had been chosen, and what the figure truly wanted. When I opened my eyes, the chamber no longer looked the same. The pale light that had once filtered through the cracks above had shifted, painting the walls in a deeper shade of gold. My chest rose and fell with quick breaths, and for a second I wondered if I had truly slept or simply collapsed into another strange layer of this place. Elena sat near the far wall, her knees drawn close, head lowered as if she were whispering something to herself. Across from us, another figure stirred, a woman I had never seen before. She looked disoriented, her hair damp, her clothes torn at the edges, and when her eyes met mine, they carried the same frightened recognition I had felt upon first arriving here. The air held a charge that unsettled me, like walking into a room where an argument had just ended. I rubbed my hands together, trying to shake off the chill, and glanced toward the tunnel we had come from. It remained dark, silent, though part of me kept expecting the man to appear, carrying the weight of whatever battle had held him behind. The new woman's voice was quiet, almost trembling, when she spoke her name as if it might vanish if said too loudly. Elena shifted closer to her, offering what little comfort she could, though both of them looked at me as though expecting some explanation. I wished I had one. All I could offer was honesty. I didn't know why I was here any more than they did. Still, something inside me whispered that there was a reason our paths had converged. I remembered the voice that had called out in the courtyard, the way it wrapped around my thoughts like vines tightening around stone. This woman, whoever she was, seemed pulled by the same unseen force. I could see it in the way her eyes flicked toward the shadows as though searching for someone hidden there. We spent some time gathering what little strength remained. Elena suggested moving on before the silence broke into something less forgiving, and though I wanted to wait for the man who had stayed behind, I knew she was right. The chamber felt temporary, a pause between storms, and the longer we lingered, the heavier the air grew. The passage out was narrow, carved unevenly, as though rushed into existence by hands that never intended it to last. I led the way this time, my fingers brushing along the stone walls, each curve and crack grounding me in the strange reality I could not escape. Behind me, I heard the hesitant steps of the new woman, followed by Elena's steadier tread. It wasn't long before the whispers returned. They were softer than before, almost tender, as if they were testing the edges of our minds rather than forcing their way inside. My pulse quickened. I caught Elena's gaze and saw the same tension mirrored in her face. The woman, however, slowed her steps, her lips parting as though to respond. I grabbed her wrist before she could speak, my voice sharper than I intended, urging her to keep moving. She flinched, confusion clouding her expression, but she obeyed. I didn't tell her the truth, that the whispers had used my own thoughts earlier, shaping them until I nearly believed they were mine. I couldn't risk her falling into that same trap. The corridor bent sharply and then opened into a hall lined with tall columns, their surfaces etched with faint symbols that pulsed like fading embers. The space felt older than the rest, sacred in a way I couldn't quite explain. Elena traced her fingers across one of the markings, her expression unreadable, while the woman stood frozen in the center, eyes wide with awe. I couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. My steps echoed louder than they should have, bouncing back from the columns in ways that made it impossible to know where the sound truly came from. Every few seconds, I thought I saw movement at the edges of the hall, a shadow slipping behind the stone, gone before I could fully focus on it. Then came a familiar presence, not the man, not his steady defiance, but something colder, something that made my stomach twist. The woman let out a soft gasp, her eyes locked on the far end of the hall where the shadows deepened unnaturally. I knew without being told that it was the same figure, the same force that had haunted us since the beginning. Elena pulled me close, whispering that we had to choose, stand our ground or keep running. I hated the decision because both felt impossible. The hall was vast, with no clear exit, and yet the idea of turning back into the narrow passage filled me with dread. My hands trembled as I considered the weight of it, every choice threatening to collapse into ruin. The figure did not move closer, not yet. It lingered, waiting, its presence heavy enough to bend the air around us. The woman we had found took an involuntary step toward it, her eyes glazed, her expression caught between fear and longing. Elena tightened her grip on my arm, anchoring me before I could do the same. And then, faint but undeniable, I heard another sound. Footsteps. Measured, strong, cutting through the whispers with every strike against the stone floor. My chest tightened with hope and dread at once. Whoever approached was either salvation or another twist in this endless labyrinth of fear and wonder. I stood frozen, torn between running and waiting as the sound grew louder. Elena's hand did not let go, her eyes flicking between me and the dark where the figure watched. The new woman's breath quickened, caught in some invisible tug of war. The footsteps stopped, and silence fell again, sharper than any sound could be. I realized then that every pause in this place carried meaning, that silence itself was a choice, a message waiting to be understood. I swallowed hard, my pulse drumming in my ears, and prepared for whatever revelation was about to step into the light. The sound returned slowly, as if the hall itself had been holding its breath. My pulse matched it, uncertain whether to speed up or stay still. Elena's grip on my arm was steady, grounding me, but the new woman drifted a step ahead as though drawn by a thread we could not see. From the far side of the chamber, the footsteps grew clear. A figure emerged, tall, shoulders broad, dressed in dark fabric that shifted with the faintest breeze. His face carried both exhaustion and determination, and his eyes scanned us quickly before settling on the shadow lingering at the edge of the hall. Relief washed over me, mixed with dread. He was the man who had vanished before, the one who had shielded us. I wanted to call out, but my voice caught in my throat. The shadow opposite him stirred, spreading along the columns like ink spilling into water, and the air grew colder. The stranger moved closer, his steps calm though each one echoed with finality. He did not speak at first. Instead, he looked at each of us, his gaze heavy with unspoken warning. The new woman clutched her chest as though his presence unlocked something buried inside her, while Elena stiffened, ready for anything. When he finally spoke, his voice was low but carried easily through the vast hall. He said we had crossed into a place that lived outside of time, a fracture between what was real and what had been forgotten. My skin prickled at his words. He did not explain how he knew, and I did not ask. Part of me feared the answer. The shadow rippled, shifting shape, never quite solid. My heart hammered as I watched, unable to blink, the sense of dread crawling higher with each second. The man, our unlikely guardian, stood firm, though his jaw tightened as if bracing for an impact none of us could see. I wanted to step back, to hide behind the columns, yet something rooted me in place. It felt wrong to turn away, as though this moment was not only about survival, but about understanding. The hall itself seemed to demand our witness. Elena whispered my name, urging caution, but her own voice shook with uncertainty. The new woman suddenly staggered forward. Her lips moved soundlessly, her eyes glassy, locked on the darkness. It was as if something inside that shadow called to her, promising answers she longed for. Before she could go further, the man caught her by the wrist, pulling her back with surprising gentleness. The contact seemed to break whatever trance held her. She gasped, blinking rapidly, and for the first time since meeting her, I saw true fear take hold. Her hands trembled as she clung to his arm, as if she recognized him not only as protector, but as the only anchor left in this unraveling world. I could feel the energy around us shift again. The columns vibrated faintly, the etched symbols glowing brighter, pulses of light beating like a distant heart. The shadow recoiled, then expanded, stretching toward the ceiling, testing the boundaries of the hall, as though it meant to consume it whole. The man positioned himself between us and the spreading darkness. His back straightened, shoulders squared, and his voice rang out, calm yet resolute. He spoke words that sounded older than language, each syllable deep enough to reverberate through my chest. The symbols along the columns flared in response, casting the hall in sudden brilliance. I shielded my eyes from the glow, but I couldn't look away completely. There was beauty in it, harsh yet mesmerizing, like watching a storm break open the sky. Elena stood rigid beside me, her lips parted in awe, while the new woman clung desperately to the man's sleeve, as though afraid the light would tear her away. The shadow twisted violently, its form unraveling at the edges. A sound rose from it, not a cry but a resonance, as though it tried to drown out the man's words. For a moment the hall shuddered, cracks appearing along the floor, the light flickering as if unsure which side to favor. My breath caught. This was the tipping point, the fragile balance between being lost forever or stepping into something entirely new. The man's voice grew louder, steady against the chaos, each word cutting through the trembling air. Slowly, the glow steadied, filling every corner of the chamber, until the darkness was forced to shrink back. When the light finally dimmed to something bearable, silence fell again. The shadow was gone, at least for now. The columns still glowed faintly, their symbols alive, but the oppressive weight that had followed us was lifted. I realized my hands were clenched tight, nails pressing into my palms. The man turned to us at last. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes lingered on me longer than the others. It was as if he knew something I had not yet discovered about myself. I wanted to demand answers, but all I managed was a shallow nod, acknowledging both my gratitude and my fear. Elena spoke first, asking what would happen next, though her voice cracked with exhaustion. He answered carefully, telling us this was only one threshold, and there were many more to cross. My stomach sank, but a part of me already expected it. Somehow I knew the path forward would not be simple. The new woman leaned against a column, her breathing uneven, eyes still glassy with remnants of whatever had tried to claim her. I stepped toward her, offering support, and she accepted, her hand cold in mine. In that fragile moment, I understood we were bound together now, not by choice, but by survival. The man walked ahead, his stride unhurried yet commanding. We followed, silent, each step echoing in the hall that had nearly consumed us. My thoughts spun with questions, yet none felt safe to ask. Instead, I carried them inside, waiting for the moment when the answers would reveal themselves, whether I wanted them or not.